behalf of our County Manager, Dina Diorio, I'd like to welcome you to our Community Service Grants Information Session. My name is Michael Bryant. I'm with the Office of Management and Budget, and thank you for being here this afternoon. Can't think of a better place to be on a Friday afternoon than discussing nonprofit funding, right? I can't. I don't know about you all. I get excited. But no, seriously, thank you for being here again this afternoon and having an interest in partnering with Mecklenburg County to serve our residents. Today, you'll receive a lot of information pertaining to our fiscal year 2019 Community Service Grant funding process. I encourage you to take advantage of the opportunity to make sure you have a good understanding of the requirements that we have in place, not only to receive funding, but to simply apply. There are some things that you must check off the list as you submit your application. For those of you that are returning from last year, you'll be pleased to know that there are no changes to the process this year, and that also there are improvements to the online application. Before I turn it over to Christopher Williams and Benjamin Chambers, they are the two project leads. There's one housekeeping item I'd like to call out. This microphone that is in the center of the room is not to amplify the room. However, it is for the recording. We are recording this session, and it will be posted on the Community Service Grant website. So that would allow us to hear your questions as well as the responses that the team will provide as well. So with that, I'll turn it over to Christopher and Ben, and then following their presentation, they will open it up for a Q&A session, okay? Welcome again. Thank you.
Thank you for the brief introduction, Michael. Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you all for coming out to the Community Service Grant Information Session. This year, we are also joined by the host Community Service Grant team. We do have Carly Bryant, Brittany Jones, as well as Brenda Jahesh. Together, we've been able to schedule out the FY19 process, and for some of you all who are returning applicants, you all will be happy to hear that we've made significant updates to the online application process. So we will be able to walk you all through those process changes at the end of this presentation. So without further ado, let's go ahead and jump into the agenda for today. What is the intent of today's information session? Well, we will go over the purpose of the Community Service Grant Program, followed by the funding categories by key themes, as well as provide a recap of the sunset policy, the nonprofit eligibility requirements. We'll walk you all through a demo of the online application, as well as host a brief Q&A session before closing out with brief remarks. Looking here at the purpose, Community Service Grants is the county's way of partnering with local nonprofits that align to our Department of Strategic Business Plans. So Dr. Monica Allen, who is heading up strategic planning and evaluation, last year she had the opportunity to overhaul the county's strategic business plans. And as she created those community-facing key themes, we're actually rolling those out as our funding categories, the same as last year. Looking at the criteria here, there are 6 eligibility criteria, and there is also 2 requirements. Starting at the top, you see that we want you all to be able to clearly contribute to a key theme. So as you all are looking at your organization and whichever program you would like to apply for funding under, you'll want to look on our website with the material that we'll provide you all to find a clear linkage to one of the key themes. Now, secondly, you all will want to serve county residents. You must have a 501c3 nonprofit status with the IRS. One of the things that we'll point out several times throughout the presentation is that audited financial statements are required, which must be prepared by an independent CPA. Next, we have documentation supporting a diversified workforce that can come in the form of your EEO policy. And lastly, under the eligibility section, a professional membership that supports organization sustainability. We want to know, hey, are you investing in yourself as an organization to be able to sustain the programs that you all are implementing without receiving county funds? Now, the two requirements that we have will basically verify that you all are not on a revenue suspension list, and next, overdue taxes. Verify that you do not owe any overdue taxes. Okay. So the introduction of the key themes, I've already opened up briefly about these. There are basically 7 community-facing key themes. On the next slide, we'll also have a link so that you can get a description of each. But we have optimized investments in criminal justice, strengthening families, economic development, greater economic independence for residents, aging with dignity, community health and wellness, and environmental stewardship. Now, it's important to know for each one of these key themes, again, that the departments roll up to these key themes based upon their goals and objectives. So looking at the key themes, you may see a park and recreation that may be under several key themes. For example, aging with dignity is the key theme, but departments that also have goals and objectives that align to this key theme will be park and recreation, public health, social services. Secondly, you see community health and wellness, public health, and park and recreation again also rolls up to this key theme. At the bottom of this page, whenever we email this PowerPoint out to you all, feel free to visit this link so that you can see the full descriptions of each of the 7 categories. Now, the sunset policy. This is the second year that we will be implementing the sunset policy. FY18 was the first year. There are 5 things that we would like to point out to you all about the sunset policy. And before doing so, if we did not send you an email saying that you're undergoing a sunset review, you do not have to worry about this, at least this year. So for the first point here, nonprofits awarded funding for 3 consecutive fiscal years for FY16, 17, and 18, you're undergoing a sunset evaluation this year. Now, that sunset evaluation is basically trying to determine whether or not you will become a vendor with the county. If you become a vendor with the county, it's because of a few things. If I skip down to bullet point 4, it's based upon your strength of application, alignment to key themes and the departmental strategic business plans, and whether you're able to fill a gap in service. Now, the last thing that's noted on this page, if your organization undergoes a sunset evaluation this year, if you're unable to secure funding for FY19, then you must wait 3 years before you can apply for community service grant funding again. So for the 4 organizations that are undergoing that review this year, if you do not secure funding, you have to wait till 2022. Okay. So before we get into all the slides detailing the audit requirements, we wanted to insert this slide again, the eligibility and requirements slide. There are 6 eligibility requirements again, and also there are 2 additional requirements dealing with revenue suspension and overdue taxes. Okay. There are 4 slides here dealing with audits, so please bear with us. For this first one here, it basically touches on that your audit must be prepared looking at generally accepted accounting principles. There's a few more statements here that you all can read over whenever it's emailed out to you all, and it will also be provided up on the website as well. At the bottom of this page, it notes that for your FY17 audit, it's due back to us by May 11th, 2018. Now, whenever you all fill out your online application, if you already received your audit, feel free to upload it. If it's not available at the time, there will be an email address provided in this presentation to send it to us on May 11th, 2018. All right. On the second page of the audit requirements, this page will detail the North Carolina general statutes as well as the OMB circular that your your independent CPA should look over. In a nutshell, forward this presentation to your CPA. they'll know what requirements that they'll be held to in preparing your annual audit. Now, there's a few things noted here if you fail to submit audited financial statements in accordance with the requirements that are being provided to y'all. The first scenario here is for current grant recipients. The county may suspend all funds immediately until the county receives the audit. For the second one, for new grant applicants, you have not met the application requirements. For all, the county finance director may grant a reasonable extension if circumstances for submission are beyond your control or your CPA's control. Here is just a brief infographic in a nutshell. If your financials were not prepared by a CPA, then that's a clear sign that, hey, you just need to stop there. Secondly, if it's not prepared in accordance with GAAP, generally accepted accounting principles, and if the date of your audit does not have June 30th, 2017, then just stop there. So for some organizations, you all may not be on a fiscal year. So for FY17, it may go from January 2017 until December 2017. And that's the reason why the deadline isn't until May 11th, 2018. That'll give you a few months to have that audit prepared. Now, I will say some CPA firms do fill up quickly. So if you're on a calendar year and you're not currently getting an audit done, you may want to go ahead and start reaching out to CPA firms to get that scheduled. Now, on the right-hand side, we do have some red flags noted: a qualified or an adverse opinion, negative equity on your balance sheet, a high debt ratio. We also have, if you're pending any lawsuits, going concerns noted by the CPA, and tax liabilities. These next two infographics, if you say screenshots, it basically shows the website that we'll visit to make sure that you're not on the revenue suspension list, and also the website that we'll look at to verify that you don't owe any overdue taxes to the state of North Carolina. Okay. At this time, I'll go ahead and kick it to Ben Chambers, who is also the co-lead for the community service grant process. He'll be able to walk you all through anything dealing with performance.
Good afternoon. My name is Ben Chambers, and I work on the strategic planning and evaluation team within the Office of Management and Budget. With these community service grants, what that means is that I'm most involved with the gathering and reporting and sort of evaluation of performance data. So I wanted to share a few things we're looking for regarding the performance measures that the application will ask you to include. First, we assess full performance on an annual basis. We do ask for quarterly reports, and the process for developing quarterly reports starts with your application. We'll ask you to submit some performance measures. We'll go through a process of reviewing those measures and possibly making adjustments. And then if your grant is funded, or your grant application is funded for FY19, we would then use that to start the quarterly reporting process. And then we do an annual wrap-up and review at the end of the grant year. Included in those performance measures will be an ask for a couple of different kinds of measures, and those are listed there in front of you. Really, we're interested in if the measures show that you're meeting your goals, or the description of the services that you're going to provide in the application. We would ask you to retain the records of raw and aggregate data for our review, again, which usually happens at the end of the grant year. What we mean by raw data is typically an Excel sheet that has records that you use to tabulate whatever result is on your quarterly report. And if you have specific questions about that and how that fits with your program, we can certainly talk more in depth about it. One important thing, we will never ask you to submit sensitive client data. We understand your programs serve people in various ways, and you have a need to protect the data that you receive. At every point in time, we're looking for anonymized data. whether that's using an ID from your information system or some other way that will work out. But if we ever ask you to send in something and it feels like we're asking you to send in sensitive data, that will never be the intention of the ask. So you should stop, let us know, and we'll figure out a workaround. Oh, and of course, if you have any questions as you're going through the application and thinking through your measures during the application period, please feel free to reach out to us and ask an informational question. We're happy to have that conversation. I'm going to go over just a few examples of the kinds of measures the application will ask for. So the first group is output measures, which is typically a count of what's produced by your activity or program. It could be clients, it could be meals, it could be any number of things, depending on what your application or your program is focused on. But the output is really sort of the immediate thing that is produced. The outcome measure speaks to a result and how well that result is being achieved over time. So this has much more to do with, it's usually expressed in terms of a percentage, although not always, and has to do with the ultimate goal or end or aim of your program and really telling the story of its impact. And finally, there are just a few questions that we'd ask you to keep in mind as you're developing the performance measures and the targets that go along with them. First, is the raw data available in a way that can replicate the calculation, right? That's one thing we're very interested in, making sure that a result at one point in time stays that same result over time. And that's part of the reason why we ask you to retain the copies of the raw data. Are the measures reflective of the full scope of your service? We really want measures that will tell the story of the great work that is happening in the community. And so if there is an important part of your program, it should be reflected some way, somehow, in the measures you propose. And then finally, when thinking about the targets for your performance measures, we're really trying to sort of hit a sweet spot between being realistic on the one hand. We don't want you to set targets that are completely unreachable for the sake of looking strong. And on the other hand, to be realistic, right? We also don't, on the other hand, to be ambitious and to really push the program to do as much good as possibly can be done in that situation. And after walking through those performance measures, Chris is now going to share with you some of those improvements to the application he mentioned earlier and sort of do a more formal walkthrough for you.
Thank you, Ben. And before we jump into a demo of this new and improved online application, I failed to get a pulse check to see how many people in the room will be applying for community service grant funding for the first time this year. Oh, wow, that's great. I will say that one of the reasons why we had implemented the sunset review policy is because we wanted to give new applicants a chance to compete for community service grant funding. With persons who have received funding for 3 consecutive fiscal years, it's a great opportunity for them to partner with our departments. But as they transition from community service grant funding, all the people who have showed your all's hands, it helps you all to compete for CSG funding. So we certainly thank you all as well as our repeat applicants for coming out. Let's go ahead and transition over to the online application for this year. Okay, so after going back to the drawing board and realizing that a lot of the feedback that we've received is that you all weren't able to create a login, be able to save and come back, we're happy to say this year you'll be able to create a login, save and come back, take as many days. You won't have to fill out this extensive application in one setting. All right, so looking here, excuse me. Okay. If you look here, whenever you open up the link from the PowerPoint or our online, or our mecnc.gov website, you'll be able to click on the apply button. For this first sheet here, we're basically just providing some background information on why we do community service grants as well as how much money we spent for community service grants in the prior year for FY18. So it's noted here that we spent roughly $1.3 million this past year. On the second page here, you'll be able to create a login. You'll basically want to click on this register button. Once you click on the register button, it will prompt you to go ahead and put in an email address as well as a password. What else is on this page? Additionally, we have contact information that will be on this first screen that you'll open. So you want to put in your first, middle, last name, whether you're the executive director, the address, telephone number, and so forth. The next screen here. This page will populate part of the information that you've already filled out. You'll want to check the box if it's the same information, and it'll populate the address and the rest of the contact information. This first box, leave it blank, and also you want to put in the name of your organization. Now, everything that I'm showing you here is basically the step-by-step how-to to fill out this online application. So whenever you leave here today, just feel free to get this from your email that we'll send out to you all, or download it from our website. Okay. All right, so once you're able to set up an online ID, you can begin filling out this online application. You'll simply want to click the apply button. Once you click apply, it will prompt you to fill out the name of your organization, the amount of funding that you're requesting, as well as some primary contact information. Now for this first screen here, it's basically to be able to create a log inside of our system to store your application. With that being said, on the next page, we'll require that you'll go ahead and start filling in information for your executive director and so forth. Now, what's visible here is basically keeping track that, hey, these two sections are complete. Once you get to the third bullet here, there are 5 different forms that you'll want to fill out for the online application. You'll simply want to click on name to sort these and put it in a sequential order, and click on the proposal cover sheet. Once you click on the proposal cover sheet, it'll go ahead and ask you your nonprofit credentials again. You'll put in the name of your organization, the name of your program, the EIN number, the number of years that you've been established, as well as the amount of funding that you're requesting. By clicking save and continue, it'll prompt you to put in the next step of information. You'll have the name of your executive director. I have here Brad Pitt. I see a lot of you all think that is funny, and thank you for that. Okay, we have also the address, basic contact information, and so forth. Now, it's important to note that whenever you all fill out this, you'll want to mark it as complete so that you don't have to come back to this page. If you click save and continue, before you submit the application, it'll prompt you to go back here to mark it as complete. Okay. For this next section, section 2 of 5, is for the service summary. You'll be able to select which of the 7 categories, which of the 7 key themes you would like to apply under. And as mentioned during the presentation, we'll have a link here that you'll be able to click on so that you can see the full description of each of the 7 community-facing key themes. Once you select one of the key themes, you're able to click Mark as complete and continue. Now, the third section on here will be where you'll upload all your required documents. So there's basically 6 documents that you'll upload. We have audited financial statements. Now here it gives you a few choices. If you have your audit, you can click yes, and a box will appear for you to attach it. Also, you can select no, the audit is not available. It will be available at a later date. Or the third one, you can select no, I do not have an audit, and I will not have an audit for this grant process. After you select the applicable one, radio button for the audit, you're able to upload the rest of your documents. So we have your IRS letter certifying that you're a nonprofit, your workforce representation statement, which could be your EEO policy, the articles of incorporation, salary disclosure, followed by professional affiliations. Again, once you complete this section, mark it as complete, then save and continue. Okay, so for this fourth section here, this is where you'll spend the majority of your time at. It's where you'll put in the narrative information that we're requesting. So there's basically 8 questions that we'll ask you all under the program narrative. The first question here is the problem statement, which is asking you to describe the specific need the service proposes to address the key themes, within the key themes, and provide evidence, for example, research or data findings to support a clearly defined problem. Now we have it formatted so that you can do spell check, bold it, just format it. Try to keep it to 1,200 characters or less. After you finish this one, you can continue on to service strategy, service delivery and key activities, target population, followed by service geography, collaboration and partnerships, service results, as well as professional affiliations. Okay, so once the actual application portion is completed, where you provide a narrative information, you'll want to download our budget template. If you click the hyperlink, it'll populate a budget template for you. You fill it out, save it, choose file, and upload the completed template here. The same with performance. You'll want to download the performance template, fill it out, save it, and upload it. Once you're done with that step, you'll be well on your way to close out your online submission. After going over your data collection methodology, which will be your last question, you'll be able to submit your online application. This green check mark will appear, and you're also able to download a copy of your application as well. Okay. That's all for the online application demo. At this time, we'll go ahead and open the floor for any questions, and the whole CSG team will be happy to answer any of those. And I'm sorry, I should have said, if you would, please come to the microphone. We're taping this session. Any questions that you'll ask, other people will want to know the answers to them as well. Thank you.
What you just went through is the application process for a new applicant or someone that's maybe in their second year. This is not the application for the sunset review.
That's a great question. This will actually be the application process for new applicants and for sunset review.
You had mentioned professional affiliations. Could you clarify what you're looking for there?
Okay. So for professional affiliations, we really want to see who you're partnering with. I know one of the ones is Center for...
North Carolina Center for Nonprofits.
Thank you, Steffi. North Carolina Center for Nonprofits. There's a few others. For example, if you're in the YMCA, you may have some national partnerships that you can cite there. Anyone that you do business with, anyone that you get professional development from. The one thing that I want to note about professional affiliations is that you'll want to display that by being a part of this organization, it's helping us be sustainable as a nonprofit. We're really concerned with how you all do fund development in the event that you do not receive county funds. If you're not funded, or if you receive funds this year but not next year, we really want to see that you're able to continue on as an organization from a fiscal standpoint. Any other questions? Yes, ma'am.
Right, there were several different categories, economic independence, aging, several different. Can you apply for more than one area?
The answer to that question is yes, and I'll allow Ben Chambers to elaborate.
Sure. So you can mention more than one key theme in your application. When you select one, it will prompt you to select only one. So we'll ask you to sort of choose a primary. However, you can, in the narrative portion of your application, mention to us, we think there's also a connection to this other key theme, and here's why. And so that's how we would ask you to include a sort of secondary category if you want to do that. And then for any of those folks who are sunsetting, I know there are a few of you here today, you would sort of have the same opportunity when thinking through the categories that different departments might align to. And we would ask you to handle that in the same way.
I do understand a sunset, but could you explain the different levels, first year, second year, third year? What does that entail, and how is the process done? Because you say the sunset can partner with the first and second. Is that what you're saying?
Yes, ma'am. I'll elaborate on the sunset. So for organizations that have been funded for FY 16, 17, and 18, they're undergoing a sunset review this year. So the review that will take place, we're basically trying to see, does your program align to one of these 7 key themes? Are you able to partner with a social services or or public health? Can you do business with them because your program aligns to their strategic business plan? In the event that after 3 years of receiving funding, if your program aligns and you're able to secure a relationship with the department, you'll undergo a contract with the department and go through them for funding for the next several years if you can do business for that long. Now, worth noting again, for organizations that have not received funding for 3 consecutive fiscal years, you do not have to worry about that just yet. And also, if you're undergoing a sunset review for this year, we've already contacted those agencies.
And new organizations and small organizations, you're talking a $5,000 audit statement on financials. Is that pertinent to the process? A new organization that may not have statements. Our organization, for instance, 3 years ago, we were $498,000. For the past 3 years, we closed that out. So the past 3 years, we've not had any funding or any projects going on. So we won't have financial statements. Would that be a handicap? New organizations or organizations without financial statements?
That's a great question. It's one that we've received each year. And if I'm hearing your question correctly, you're asking whether the financial audit is required for new or smaller organizations. Unfortunately, the answer is yes. For any organization that applies for community service grant funding, or whether you're a vendor with the county, we verify that each organization has audited financial statements. Are there any other questions?
Are y'all going to make this PowerPoint available on the website? Okay.
Yes. So we'll actually email this PowerPoint out to you all, and it's actually available on the website now. It went live at 1:30. Yes, sir.
I actually have 2 questions. One being, is your department's strategic business plan accessible online?
Yes, the strategic business plans are accessible online, and there's a link inside the PowerPoint that would direct you there.
So the other question would be, is there a cap on the amount that we could propose, or?
Great question. There is not a cap. We do not have an award ceiling or a floor. In the past, new organizations have applied for funding in the ballpark of $25,000, $50,000. There's no cap. You can apply for a $5,000 grant or a $100,000 grant. It's completely up to you and your program.
Thank you.
Are there any other questions? Okay. Yes, ma'am.
Yes, for new organizations that are operating off projected budgets, but the CPA has created or given a gap letter showing that the budget is in line with the general accounting practices, is that what is accepted for your gap letter? So they're operating off of projected budgets, doesn't mean they necessarily have reached that level of funding.
As long as your CPA, as long as an independent CPA prepares your audited financial statements, it is fine. Any other questions? Yes, ma'am.
Follow-up question on the amount that the gentleman asked. In terms of determining what amount we should ask for, is it an all or nothing, or if we ask for a certain amount, we may be approved for a revised amount?
You could be approved for a different amount. So if you apply for a grant for $100,000, the review panel may decide to fund you at $50,000. What that means is that once it's actually approved by the Board of County Commissioners and everything, our office will be following up with you all to adjust your performance metrics. And that's Ben's category there.
Failed to hear you say anything about matching funds. So is this a grant that requires matching funds?
No, ma'am. However, if you, I'm a budget analyst, so here's the budget analyst side of me coming out. However, if your organization is proposing to match funds, that may make your application stronger, but it's not a requirement, to answer your question.
I'm going back to the professional affiliations question. These do not have to be a professional affiliations where you would pay dues necessarily. Could they also be collaborations, like the Homeless Services Network, which is a coalition of agencies, or Reed Charlotte's Data Collaborative, to give a couple of examples, rather than something like the center, the North Carolina Center for Nonprofits, where you pay dues?
In short, it does not have to be a paid affiliation. However, what we've seen in the past from applicants, they normally have anywhere between 1 to 3 paid affiliations that they're noting inside their application.
In addition to Chris's answer, if, as you're mentioning those types of coalitions, you could in particular talk about the benefit that your organization gets from a management perspective. Sort of, this is how it improves our operations, not only our knowledge, but actually sort of how we do what we do. That would be very helpful as well.
Are there any other questions?
Will we get a list of who attended today? Is that included in the email?
We generally do not send a list of who attended, but it's something that we may be able to do. I'll just have to go back to the office and check and see if that's something that we can do. You're welcome.
For those of us who are being sunsetted this year, is the application for 1 year only still, or is it for multiple years?
It is for 1 year only. So with community service grants and sunset applications, it's only a 1 year commitment. You do have to apply for funding each year if you're a community service grant applicant. If you become a vendor, you'll need to reach out to your department contact each year to renew that contract. You're welcome.
Also, I did not I don't recall seeing where you can upload, or whether or not you have to upload your organizations that you're collaborating with or affiliating with. Are you needing letters of support showing what their involvement is in your organization?
No, you don't have to upload those. So there's a text box for you to fill out, 1,200 characters or less, and you can describe the partnerships that you have with organizations.
But you don't need the support letter.
I know, ma'am. Any other questions? All right, at this time, I'll go ahead and turn it back over to my director, Michael Bryant, who will provide some closing remarks. Thank you all so much.
Thank you, Christopher and Benjamin, for providing this information. And thank you all for your level of engagement. The questions were really good. We greatly appreciate it. There's two things I'd like to call out before we end this afternoon. The first thing is when you submit your application, it is subject to our public request policy that we have in place. From time to time, our commissioners may ask for that information, as well as some of your peers out there, other nonprofit organizations as well. So I just want to make that clear, that once we receive that information, it is public data, okay? And then secondly, particularly information for our newer folks that are here this afternoon, that Mecklenburg County has a $1.7 billion budget. And of that amount, $426 million is appropriated to CMS, their operating budget. Our board tend to spend a lot of time in that space deliberating over what the manager is recommending to them for consideration. And then a close second is the community service grants funding. So as you may have figured out by now, based off the presentation from Benjamin and Christopher, that this process is well thought out by them and their team. And this is just the tip of the iceberg. There are several more steps that are involved prior to the manager making her recommendation in the spring for the Board of County Commissioners consideration. Now, these guys are brilliant, as you can see, but also we share those applications with other experts in the field so that they can advise them, myself, as well as our senior leadership team as it relates to the return on the investment based off of the business case that you've built in your applications. And then the manager takes all of that into consideration as she develops her $1.7 billion budget. Again, that'll be presented in the spring. So know that, a lot of attention is given to this process. We intentionally, about 3 or 4 years ago, kicked this off this time of year instead of after the holidays, because each year is becoming more and more consuming of our time. So we want to make sure that we give adequate time to this process, given the attention that it receives from all the stakeholders. So with that, I guess one last time I ask, are there any other questions for the team? Otherwise, you guys have a great afternoon, and thank you for being here again. Thank you.